Vicky, you can use the QR code and that will take you there. So please do try and log on to Menti, because we're really keen to just have another opportunity to hear lots from you, as well as the chat box as well. I'll leave that for a few moments to help people to get on there. Okay. Right. We're just past 10 o'clock and a lot of people have entered. So we're going to start. So first of all, a really warm welcome to all of you. And I will be saying this a few times. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to spend with us to discuss what we believe is really important and a real powerful skill and asset around collective leadership and cultures for transforming our NHS. So this is part of a People, Promise and Culture series that we've been running. This is the 5th one. And as it says in the title, we are really going to look at collective leadership and compassionate leadership and how it shows up for you, your teams, your departments, your trusts across ICSs, between organisations, and how that leverages culture change. So do you want to go and click on then, Lorraine? Thank you. So just to say who I am, I'm Steph Crowe. I'm the head of Cultural Leadership Programme and I work for NHS England and I'm part of the People Directorate. Today we have a host of people actually supporting this webinar and helping to share the stories, the experience with regards to the collective leadership and culture work in action. So we have our speakers and we'll introduce them in more detail as they come through their sessions. So we have Alice McGee, Kate Galoppi, we've got Bina Katecha, Jane Billows and Ricky Sommel. There's also a wider team behind the webinar. So there's myself as a host and Louise Pramas, and also our chat box host is Vicky Waterson. And then we have our production team, who's Lorraine Copnell and Dion Neblett. So between us, we'll hopefully be making your experience really worthwhile. So as I've said, this is about collective leadership. We want to talk today about using collective leadership to transform our cultures. We want to talk practically as well about how the Culture and Leadership Programme really enables that proactive and practical engaging of collective leadership and really getting that practice into our organisations. We'll be gaining inspiration, ideas, sharing stories, understanding, lessons from each of our experiences. And we'll be hearing from, as we've said, a number of people from systems level, from trust level, talk about what it's looked like and what lessons have been learned. And maybe some reflections then with regards to what needs to be done differently. How are we going to embed this? There'll be loads of opportunities to ask questions. So whether that's through the chats or indeed we'll be using Menti to actually inspire some questions and thoughts there. Thanks, Lorraine. So our agenda then. So we've got the welcome underway. First of all, we'll be hearing from our colleagues from Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland ICS. And specifically, we have representatives from the ICB team. So we have Alice McGee, we have Bina Katecha and Kate Galoppi. And then we'll get to hear the collective leadership from a trust perspective. And we'll be hearing from a couple of trusts. So we'll be hearing from Jane Billows from Liverpool University Hospitals. And we'll be hearing from Ricky Sommel from Portsmouth Hospitals University Trust. And that conversation will be supported by Louise from our team. We'll then have a really good chunk of time to ask our whole faculty and our whole panel with regards to questions and answer sessions. So as something comes up, please do just put them in the chat. Our hosting team will be collecting the questions. We might be clustering some of them in terms of themes, but we'll try and get through as many as possible. And then we'll look to close at approximately 11:30. So again, those are the Menti sort of instructions of how to get on, because we have a Menti question at the moment waiting for you, because we want to get your ideas with regards to what is collective leadership. What does collective leadership mean for you? Where have you seen it? Where have you experienced? Where have you practiced it? Or where do you wish it to be if it's been an absence, but you kind of think it will be a good idea? It'd be really good to hear that. While we're just getting some feeds on that, oh, okay, we're starting to get something through. We've got sort of core value. We've got a word cloud building now, clinical decision making. We've got together, listening, common goal, together again, partnership, empowering, voice, equity, staff involvement, collaboration is huge in there, and collaborative, and that together piece that's really coming through big. And I think it's interesting with regards to that collaboration piece, because many of you might be aware of the Messenger review that was undertaken last year into leadership in both health and social care as a joint piece as we worked more with systems working. And it really highlighted the need for collaborative leadership, collaborative working, inclusive leadership, inclusive working, and that being our future. So it's interesting how powerful that message is coming through. So we're also talking about shared values as well. Lots of aspects are shared. I saw an awareness there. There was bits of accountability. So that's building nicely. That's really building nicely. And keep psychological safety. Each time I want to go, keep building, and I'll move on. I keep seeing something else that's popping and going, oh, and another thing. I'll get carried away. So please keep feeding that through, because what we will be able to do is to share the cloud with you as participants afterwards, just as we've got that in terms of our stimulus and our ideas and thoughts. So if we move on then, Lorraine, please. So from a culture and leadership programme perspective, our programme is really based on three core tenets, really, three core pillars and principles around leadership. One of the first ones is collective leadership. And simply put, it's about leadership by all and for all. So it is that bit around individuals being empowered, and a culture where individuals are empowered, and that word was definitely in the cloud, to provide leadership at the various points in their daily work and in their careers. So it isn't actually bound by your hierarchical position or your formal position in an organisation, between organisations. It's about who's got the capability, the will, the capacity, the best person to be leading at any one point for what's needed. We've then got compassionate leadership, and this really is anchored in listening to understand and then take meaningful action for improvement. And when we get to that really deep understanding piece through listening, it really is about actually engaging to a point of empathy to really have that rich ability to then make actions count and be valuable to make that difference. And then we have inclusive leadership. So that's about enabling equity, true inclusion and belonging. Everybody's voices are heard, unique needs are recognised, unique attributes and contributions are recognised and valued. and everybody has the opportunity to thrive. So that's our context in terms of the Culture and Leadership programme. Do we click on? Thank you. So without further ado, we are going to hear from our first set of speakers and colleagues who have joined us from Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland ICS and ICB. So from now on, I will just say LLR, just because I'll get myself tongue-tied even more, but that's what it stands for. So Alice, Bina and Kate, please share your experience and your journey with regards to your inclusive culture and leadership collective working.
Thanks, Steph, and great to see so many people joining that are here for the cause, for the point around why we're all doing our job around culture and leadership. So between the three of us, we're going to talk through a bit of a context and the programme that we've been running at an ICS. So I'm going to start, and I'm the Chief People Officer for LLR ICB. So can I have the next slide, please? So a bit of a context. So because the context is important around the complexity and where you start. So LLR has a population of 1.2 million people. Our population is probably a medium-sized ICS in that context. Our spend is £1.9 billion, and we employ around 76,000 people across health and social care. So that 76,000 is across the fourth largest teaching hospital in the country, so that's University Hospitals of Leicester, right through to a GP practice or a care home and the VCSE sector. So when we talk about our people, we're talking about 76,000 people. The ICB, so that statutory organisation, employs around 270 people, just so you can see that context of the leadership challenge for us. Can I have the next slide, please? The other thing about LLR is our diversity. So outside of London, we've got one of the most diverse populations, but it's not across our whole patch. So Rutland, as you can see, the middle of the slide on the right, 97% are white, but actually it's a hugely ageing population. So the needs are very different to Leicester as a city, where you can see the pie chart has a huge diversity of our population, and that translates into our staff. So not completely, but our diverse population is a diverse workforce, and knowing that one solution, one culture, one approach won't always fit every part of our patch. And that's a really key point when we're thinking about culture. So 76,000 staff, 400 organisations as employers, plus a diverse population gives us a picture where we do need to understand our people. If I can have the next slide, please, Lorraine. There we go. So in terms of who's involved, so we, from a health perspective, we've got one large acute teaching hospital, which is University Hospitals of Leicester. We've got one community and mental health provider, and we've got the ICB. So from a health perspective, it's not the most complex. You know, there are systems where you have 4 or 5 acute providers. We have got a small number. We've then got 3 local authorities, so Leicester City Council, Leicestershire County Council and Rutland as our statutory bodies. But the story doesn't end there. I'm not going to walk through 400 different partners, but really thinking about those big NHS statutory bodies, so East Midlands Ambulance Service, our wider partners, so DHU is our provider for 111 and out of hours services. We've got general practice, we've got district councils. So the more you expose our who are we, the more complex it does get, but recognising you've got to start somewhere. And that was really key when we were thinking about our culture and leadership programme. If I can have the next slide, please. And part of our context is what we're trying to achieve. So we've all had the ICS guidance, the legislation around setting up ICBs, but what does that mean for LLR? And we framed our priorities in 4 areas. So best start in life, staying healthy and well, living and supported well, and dying well. And that's important in this context because we all know where we're going. What are we trying to achieve together across all our partners? It's this. We can all buy into that. There is no contentious areas around what, of course, that's what we're trying to do. It's the how that I think is really key. And so next slide, which I think is my last one. This is the how, the principles of how we work together, and a set of statements around every decision we make comes back to these principles, comes back to those priorities. And I've just highlighted there, it's really key that one of our principles is making it a great place to work. So culture and leadership plays into one of our operating principles. So everything we do, we can bring back to, it's about making it a great place to work. And in the context of the audience, so OD leads, health and wellbeing leads, leads around culture and development, the time and effort and energy that has to go into this to do any intervention, any programme is absolutely key. So this isn't around the likes of Kate, Bina and I, whose job it is to think about our people agenda. It's within our objectives every year. It's part of our job description. The time and energy in making sure our chief executives, making sure our directors of adult services and our elected members buy into this concept and understand the journey we're going on. So they don't just say, oh, look, there's a work stream around people here, is really key. And so that builds trust. It makes it everybody's business, which means when we do programmes like culture and leadership, the local authorities aren't going, oh, well, that's a health thing. I don't need to worry about that. It's part of our business. And I would say that was the biggest fundamental for us in terms of the successes. We're starting to see those green shoots in developing the work that we are doing. So, Kay, I think I'm handing over to you now, which does a bit of a deep dive into the people agenda.
Lovely. Thank you, Alice. And thank you. So glad to be here. It's wonderful to see so many people have joined this morning. I'm Kate Galoppi. I'm the Director for Adult Social Care and Commissioning at Leicester City Council. I'm really pleased to be part of this system approach to inclusive culture and leadership. So the slide that I'm sharing with you here really sets out the governance that supports the delivery of our people strategy across the ICS. And you can see, well, you may not be able to see very clearly, but you can see the inclusive leadership and culture work stream is one of 6 work streams that are a really important delivery arm for us in achieving our ambitions. And what I want to point out in delivering that work stream is that what's really important is we actually co-own this. So that's co-chaired across the local authority and health. And I think that's a really significant thing to identify. So some of the key drivers for us in establishing this was that we were really pleased to be just one of 3 areas nationally to have the opportunity to work at system level to deliver this and to be a forerunner. So really excited about that opportunity. And although at the bottom of the page, you'll see our 4th bullet is that a key driver for us was to create an inclusive environment that we all want and deserve for our staff and our patients. By no means is that the least of our ambitions. When we recognise that by starting with our workforce, that we can translate that valuable experience, that valuable staff experience into the quality and experience of care that our people that we support receive. I think the key thing that we've set out here is the what is often NHS speak, the triple aim ambitions, but we're all signed up to that in the ICS. We're all signed up to the fact that we want improved experience, we want better care, and we want all of that done efficiently. And this is really key to that agenda. Next slide, please. So this presents to you the overview of the work stream, and I think at a glance you can see just how robust that is and how wide-reaching it is. We've got a number of different projects that cut across a number of different key areas, and each of those are really important in delivering this agenda for us and in making sure that we embed the change that we want to see in our cultures. So I won't go through each of these, but I'll just pick out a couple. And underneath the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Task Force, we've got a number of key projects that are underway. Our active bystander programme is one that I'd like to highlight for you colleagues. And that's a really key piece of work that the feedback that we've had from staff that have taken part in that programme has been wonderful. We've had comments such as best training I've ever been on. And what it's doing is it's providing more in the toolbox for staff to be able to have the confidence and the safety and the tools to challenge behaviour that we don't want to see, and to start to embed the culture that we want to see across our system. Next slide, please. So our big three, what are our big three priorities going forward? Set out in front of you the key three pieces of work that we're really driving forward and that are really important tenets to this strategy for us are developing and enabling cultural competence, are developing an open inclusive talent community, and developing our culture and leadership strategy. And it's really exciting that we've got the opportunity through this to actually, for the first time, have a baseline of what cultural competence is, both at organisational level and system level. And that's the key difference here, that we are really working at system level to embed this. It's not without its challenge, but bringing staff from across all of those organisations that Alice described is no easy feat. And so these three key pieces of work are helping us do that and make sure that this is not just at organisational level, but it's at system level. We're really excited about driving that forward. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Bina. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alice and Kate. Just for the benefit of the group, I'll introduce myself. My name is Bina Katekcher. I'm Associate Director of System, Culture, Leadership and Inclusion. And it's a real privilege to be able to come along and share our story this morning. As Kate alluded, it's a privilege that we're one of three systems that have actually had the opportunity to test out the cultural leadership programme at system level. So there's ourselves, there's Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, and there's Dorset. And we've really valued working closely and creating a community of practice with those systems that are actually taking this forward, and have benefited significantly from the support that has been provided from Steph and other colleagues in NHS. So just in terms of the Cultural Leadership Programme, there are a number of phases. And as a system, we're currently at the discovery phase. And for us as a system, in terms of that discovery phase, there's been some work in mapping out our stakeholders. And there's been some work in terms of carrying out a desktop review, looking at our res performance, staff survey performance, workforce disability performance, looking at patient experience, experience of our service users across local authorities, really understanding how things work across our partners, which Alice described earlier on. And as part of that discovery phase, we've actually come up with 9 emergent themes, which we've actually been working through as a system. As we move from the discovery phase, we'll move into the design phase, and where we'll start to co-design solutions, and then into the delivery phase. And I was just reflecting on the word cloud, which Steph shared earlier on, which captured your input. And the 2 words that really came across strongly, one was collaboration, and the other was working collectively. And for me, this is central to taking forward the cultural leadership programme at system level. So it's really important that we work with all of our partners. We work with the geography, which Alice shared. And really, this is about us working together to create the best place to work across LLR and the best place to receive care in terms of those priorities that Alice shared with us. And our strapline across LLR is more good days. It's more good days for our people, and that includes the people that use our services. Next slide, please. Oops, I think we've jumped to the end. Oh, I think
Sorry,
we may have.
that's the last slide I've got from the pack.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. Something's gone wrong. We've got some missing slides, but just to really share some of what we were actually going to be talking through with you. We've actually we ran a More Good Days session, and this was on the 3rd of March. And during our session on the 3rd of March, we actually shared what we refer to as design thinking principles. So this is about making sure that we work through our discovery findings and we ensure that, you know, we are free of prejudices and expectations, and we ensure that our colleagues that worked with us work in a curious way and working through a world of possibilities. And it's fantastic in terms of our More Good Days event. We actually had strong representation from our partners. We had good representation from the ICB board, because demonstrating that leadership is really important. And it was one of 2 sessions that we were actually taking forward. So it was a fantastic opportunity. I'll keep speaking, and then Lorraine, hopefully we'll be able to catch up in terms of the slides. If not, we can circulate the slides afterwards. Just in terms of our More Good Days event, what we've done is actually reflected our findings from the discovery phase, and we worked through what we referred to as 6 personas or 6 lenses. And what we had done is captured our findings from our interactions with our partners, and also findings in terms of the interviews, the focus groups that had actually taken place. And we actually worked through some real live examples during those sessions. Subsequently, we actually worked through prioritizing those themes and really, oh, fantastic. We found the slides. Fantastic. Thanks, Lorraine, for bringing them up. So this was the design thinking principles, which I was referring to. If we just move on to the next slide. Fantastic. These were the 6 personas. These were the 6 lenses that I was alluding to. So this is actually reflecting, we had 6 stories that reflected our findings. So we were starting to think about, well, what does this mean in terms of our inclusive culture and leadership priorities from a person lens? So this is someone that's living in one of our communities. You know, what do we need to be prioritizing in terms of those themes that arose? What do we need to do from a place lens and a diversity lens, a professional lens? And it was really interesting because we were focusing on a non-clinical care role within one of our organisations. So what does that mean from a priority perspective as we work through this? Next slide, Lorraine. So just this is a really useful slide because it demonstrates where we got to in terms of those emergent themes. So using those design thinking principles that we shared, we started to think about for each of those lenses, so from the person's perspective or the place perspective, where do we need to prioritise? And we also had a wild card because we had 9 emergent themes. But there was an opportunity, if there was anything else that colleagues came up with, there was an opportunity to capture that. And it's really important to do that so that, you know, we're trying to get as much intelligence as possible as we work through those priorities. Next slide. Thanks, Lorraine. So during our event, we actually had a live scribe, and I have to say this doesn't do it any justice, because this was produced live during the event. It was 4 meters wide. It was fascinating to see it take shape. And during our 2 half days, discovery sessions, we consolidated the findings. So for each of those personas, the 6 personas, we started to identify priorities based on our 9 emergent themes. And it's fantastic to have some visual representation that we can then share, recognizing that we ran 2 sessions around the discovery. On the back of this, Kate, Alice and I, we've got lots of demand to actually take this session and involve others in the discovery. So through our clinical executive team, we're now actually running a similar session for our professional leadership forum. We're running something very similar for our clinical cabinet, for our place-based leadership team. So it's great to get senior managers and representatives from across our partners involved in this, so that they can start connecting us in with others once they start to understand how this works and start to contribute to those priorities. Next slide, please. So as I shared, in terms of the cultural leadership programme and taking this forward at system level, we're now getting to the end of our discovery phase. We're now moving into the co-design phase, and co-production. This is about working with our partners. This is about working collaboratively as one in order to create those more good days. So we'll actually be setting up some co-design groups. We're looking for leaders for representing all of our partner organisations to lead those co-design groups and help unblock the way for those co-design groups. And then finally, we'll be moving into our implementation phase. Next slide. We did want to share with you our Academy website, because everything we do, we capture on our Academy website. So please do take time to visit this. We hope that you've got questions. Please do ask those questions in the chat. There is a session later on for us to work through those questions. But thank you so much for your interest in our journey. I'll hand back to Steph.
Thank you so much, Alice, Kate and Bina. You know what, I've been working with you guys, and each time I hear you talk about your journey, I just get filled with absolute joy every single time. And actually, from some of the comments in the chat, you can see that what you've been doing, what you've been describing is really resonating, from the conceptual strategic level down to the practical anchoring into how we go about it. I thought throughout what you've shared, what was particularly striking was constantly at the various points identifying really quite clearly your common goals. So whether it's the 4 for the systems, whether it's your principles of working, whether it's your prioritization, and also, Alice, where you actually talked about the energy, the focus, the time it takes to anchor that in, and the importance of building trust for collaborative and collective working, which is key. It's a fundamental. And I loved the statement, I think you said it, Alice, as well, which is really grounding, because it's the reality of this is you have to start somewhere, because sometimes it can feel totally overwhelming with regards to, oh, well, we have to find everybody and anywhere before we can start somewhere. Myron Rogers, some of you might know his work in terms of systems thinking, which really anchors into that collective piece. One of his maxims is start somewhere and follow it everywhere. So brilliant that Bina was saying about the synthesis event that's happened, and now others are wanting to get involved and they are following it where they takes them, and it will actually grow. That's so energizing. Thank you so much for actually sharing that through. So as Bina and colleagues have mentioned, there'll be plenty of opportunity for questions. So what we're going to do now is to now hear from our trust colleagues with regard to collective leadership from a trust perspective. And here we'll have Jane Billows, we'll have Ricky Sommel, and Louise will actually support a conversation with them in terms of just eliciting again how collective leadership shows up in those trust contexts. So thank you.
Thank you, Steph, and thank you everybody so far. This morning I'm delighted to be joined by Jane Billows from Liverpool University Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust, and Ricky Sommel, who is now 7 months into his role at Portsmouth Hospitals University NHS Trust, but who also used the Culture and Leadership Programme at Isle of Wight NHS Trust to talk about their experiences of using the Culture and Leadership Programme. So starting our conversation this morning, I'd like to invite you, Jane, and then Ricky, to start by sharing your experiences of building compassionate collective leadership within your own trusts. And if I can ask you to maybe think about how you started that process and also how you decided who gets a seat at the table. So Jane, if I could start with you, please.
Thanks, Louise. Thank you. Yes, and welcome everybody. I'm really honoured to have the opportunity to talk to you again, talk to you about this. So yeah, in Liverpool, we took the NHS England leadership and culture and leadership programme material and literature, and we just started with that. The starting point for us as well was we really did have a clear case for change. We were a newly formed trust of a merger of 2 large trusts within our city of Liverpool. And we are now a very large acute trust with over 16,000 employees. So very big. It still blows my mind every day about how big we are. We had a new chief exec join us in May last year. And over the course of the last 8 months, we have seen a newly formed exec team. So we literally had our case to change was just there. It was just there. There wasn't anything, nobody was going to argue. We didn't have a case to change there. We have one of the things we have got is a really good cultural destination through our values and our vision. So that was really quite good, and they're owned and valid and across the organisation. So that's one of the things that we've got as a really good base and starting point that we did. How we managed it through a project team within the OD, but we are trying to do it across the trust, and that's why we've done our change team, our culture change team. So who did we get at the table, Louise? To answer your question on that, it was started by a steering group, and our chief exec James Sumner, he set up the steering group, and that was made of representatives from hospital leadership teams, some of the exec team, staff side, various other people as well. But really the steering group is a decision making, and it was a bit of a directive group. And we knew then if we wanted to do the programme, how it's supposed to be done and properly, you know, getting everybody's views, working through discovery, we did need a culture change team. So our steering group looked at some of the options, looked at how other organisations had done it, how it had been managed in different trusts. And what we decided to do, we chose to take the diagonal slice of the organisation, the representative slice. So that's how we chose to do it. And what we did was we went out and we asked for volunteers. We just said, who wants to express an interest in joining our culture change team? And we just opened it up trust-wide, and we asked 3 questions. We asked, why did people want to be part of the culture change team? We asked, what was the unique contributions that they would bring to this team? And then we asked, what do you think are our biggest challenges? Oh, and wow, we got some big information in from there, so that was good. And then we looked at our organisation as a slice. So we looked at our staff groups, our bands, our sites. We're over a couple of sites, a couple of hospitals, different bases. And we matched our expressions of interest against this. And I always say, like, it was very well managed because we almost got that representative slice, but it was really just good luck that it worked like that. But what we did have to do a little bit of targeted research just to tinker with the size, just to make sure it was a representative slice. And we added additional members, things like our staff network leads or representatives, some of the areas where we needed to make sure that voice was in there. And very quickly, we had a team of 70 culture change team members, and it was great. They've now called themselves Advancing Culture Together, and they are our ACT team, and that's what they do. They act. They're not passive. They are very much about the act and the action. But 70 people, and they're fabulous. It's only 0.5% of our organisation. So we knew one of our aims is high levels of engagement, and we knew we had to do that. So what we asked each culture change team member to do was go out and recruit 10 culture ambassadors. And our culture ambassadors' role was to assist in the programme, and their role was to reach a further 10 people. And by doing that, we went from 70 to 700 out to, we're not quite there yet, but the aim will be when our ambassadors talk to everyone, they talk to 10 people, that'll be 7,000. And that's 40% of our organisation. And that's how we get people at the table. So we've got a very big table because it's going to take 7,000 people. Yeah. So hopefully that answered your question, Louise.
Thanks, Jane. And that cascading of action is fantastic. Thank you. Ricky, would you like to describe your situation?
Thank you, Louise, and good morning, everybody. And great to hear the amazing work Jane and her team are doing over at Liverpool. Excuse me, I'm a little bit jet lagged. I flew in from America early this morning, so I'll try to make as much sense as possible. But I think I always like to start off with a definition. So most of my talk today will be around the impact at the Isle of Wight, where we are massive users of the CRP program. Then I'll touch upon the work that we're going to transfer over to Portsmouth. But starting off with the definition in mind around collective leadership and looking at all the great words that came through. The philosophy that really stands out for me is shared responsibility, shared decision making, and shared accountability throughout every nuance of our leadership at every level of our organisation, from frontline services to the trust board. That shared accountability, responsibility, and decision making is crucial. And this may sound a little bit disingenuous, so please bear with me. Working firstly in the private sector, in the banking sector, I learned the importance of return on investment and the bottom line. So bear with me for a moment. And the biggest starting tip I would give you for any organization at the start, middle, or end of your culture journey is, are we answering the exam question? And those exam questions are within the NHS staff survey. So one of the first things I do is look at the people in OD service offer, and then I map it over to the questions within the NHS staff survey, because that's what people are marking their homework on our organisations. Yes, is absolutely inspired by the previous presentations from Leicester and Leicestershire. Amazing work that's going on there. And that really resonated with me because it's talked about collective leadership, but then it started talking about having an impact. So happy, a great place to work, right? Happy, healthy, motivated, all incredibly important things. But a critical question when you think of the staff engagement score in the NHS staff survey is 3 elements: advocacy, involvement, and motivation. And if you look at the 3 questions, and there's 9 questions there, if you look at the 3 questions for involvement, do I feel involved in this organisation? Can I make change happen in my local area of work? And does the organisation involve me? So that calculates the staff engagement score. So the importance of collective leadership is immediately there in terms of that return on investment. So that's always been my kind of philosophy starting point. In terms of the final 2 elements, just in terms of that introduction, the data impact is also incredibly important. So understand the definition of the objective, but then also what are the key performance indicators? Yes, absolutely. Staff survey, our pulse surveys will give us that measure. But I focus specifically on the staff engagement score and looking at those key elements. So again, we saw transformations within 3 years at the Isle of Wight, from recommending the organisation as a place to work from 30% to 60% within 2 years, and response rate of 30% to 60% in my first year and then 65% in the second year. So again, change can occur quite rapidly by focusing on those key elements. And then finally, the methodology, building upon the great work that CRP did, and then starting the journey of the culture transformation at the Isle of Wight. And bear in mind, Isle of Wight was one of the worst performing trusts in the country for staff engagement and experience at the start of the journey when CRP came in. And then I joined 2 years into the journey, and it was just a natural transition of that. So not wanting to do something completely left center and go down a different route because that would confuse the organization. But looking at the nuances and the connectivity of a philosophy I wanted to bring into the organization with that, and how does that link in with CRP? And luckily, Louise, when I'm looking at the graphic behind you, that's everything. You know, that's a great place to work. That's all. And the NHS People Promise, which I absolutely embedded and integrated in. Love the People Promise. That gives us that opportunity to invest and grow. I'll just stop there, Louise.
Thanks, Ricky. And I love that principle of that shared accountability, shared responsibility and decision making. That feels like a really helpful guide to make sure that you're bringing in that collective activity through how you're working. So I'd now like us to kind of focus on some specific questions concerning kind of your journey and the process you've undertaken in your organisations. And perhaps if we start with you, Jane, as you're kind of earlier on in that journey, it would be helpful to know kind of how the Culture and Leadership Programme has helped you to inform and change your organisation's approach to collective leadership in both kind of internal and potentially external systems.
Thanks, Louise. Yeah, so again, as we are still at early days, so we're just looking at it. So I think the culture network that we've set up, that I just explained earlier, you know, the collectiveness comes through all that, and the message that we are all leaders, you know, really it's not about the management, it's about us all leading, and it's about us demonstrating the behaviours we want from that collective compassionate leadership. So I think we're still very early days, but it has brought it to, it's in the literature, it's in the conversations, it's how we're talking about things. And with our culture network, that same message is coming across, and the network works both ways. It's at the moment we're in discovery, so we're sending messages down with the language and thinking about that collective leadership, but we're also gathering information coming back through, and that's, you know, we are discovering, sorry to steal your term, we are discovering all the time. And I think by doing that and having a wide network, that's how we're actually we are changing that collective leadership. But yeah, it is very early days yet.
Fantastic, Jane. Thank you. And Ricky, for you, what are you seeing kind of at the other end of that journey in terms of how that approach to collective leadership has changed?
Brilliant. Thank you, Louise, and thank you, Jane. I think if I go back to the start again at the Isle of Wight, I think I worked with, we talk about the seat at the table, right? So as a Deputy Director of Organisational Development, I had a firm seat on the board and the trust board throughout my whole time at the Isle of Wight. And Maggie Oldham, who was the Chief Exec at the time, made sure, and my boss, the Chief People Officer, Julie Pennicoat, made sure that happened. And it's the same at Portsmouth. Penny Emmerich, our Chief Executive, has placed me at that centre of decision making as well. So OD is at the centre of all organisational decision making, which makes my job a lot more easier. And I think the biggest, again, and tip number 2 I would give at the start, and I've continued year on year, is to have an annual conversation called Leaderfest with the exec, with the rest of the organization. And this is really simple, 1-hour conversations, culture conversations with the rest of the organization. And there are 5 key elements to that. So as part of building collective leadership, there's building trust, there's compassionate leadership, inclusive leadership, respect and values, and inspiring communication. So these 1-hour bite-sized conversations are held annually with the rest of the organization. So there's a systematic and consistency around that conversation. So building trust is led by our Chief Executive, and that's a regular conversation we have with the rest of the organization. Compassionate leadership with our Chief Nurse, inclusive leadership with our Chief People Officer, respect and values through our Medical Director, and inspiring communication with our Director of Communications. So that gives a regular voice, and I don't prep the exec into these sessions. So it's a very raw conversation that we have, where we look at the data as well from the staff survey, and then we start to co-design improvement priorities, and it's one big improvement priority. So these are the 5 people promises that those exec make, and then we communicate that back and implement it, and they're quite quick and easy. You said we did. But then final piece around collective responsibility, then that's devolved in our leadership offer throughout the whole organization, that these are then local decisions made by the divisional triumvirates, or your divisional SLT, your team leaders, your heads of nursing, your ward managers, your sisters, your team leaders, your supervisors, across portering, healthcare support. Everybody has this conversation, and it just builds a real rapid swell of improvement across the organization.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm really picking up on this theme of this kind of, it feels almost organic as it kind of grows, and the conversations are happening, which is fantastic. And I guess as a kind of follow on to that, really, what do you look for to know that you're getting it right? Ricky, do you want to start with that one, maybe?
Yeah, I think sometimes, I fall into the trap of going to the data, and that's who I am as a person. But I think sometimes I have to reflect and remind myself we're not a human resource. We're human beings, and quite often it's that smile. That great place to work is people coming into work that get up and go. You're not hitting that snooze button 15 times, because we're working in such. We're working in a VUCA world. So a VUCA world is volatile, unpredictable, complex, and ambiguous. VUCA is a business term. And, you and I, everyone on this call, be thinking, absolutely, we're living in a VUCA world. And it's the smile on your face when you get into work. It's not hitting that snooze button 15 times. It's coming into work knowing it's going to be the most challenging day we've had throughout our whole working lives. But you know what? I enjoy working with my team. I'm happy with the service I'm providing to my patient and wider community. It's the human element which I think is really important. So I'm not going to talk about data in this answer.
Thanks, Ricky. Thank you for that. And Jane, how about you? What are you looking out for on your journey?
So yeah, absolutely, completely agree with everything that Ricky was just saying. But we are thinking of using some of our data and some of the information you mentioned about the pulse, our engagement, motivation, advocacy, all those areas are indicators. But as you say, we've got those softer indicators as well. We're at the point where we'll know we've got it right because, well, I don't think it could be. In some areas couldn't be really worse than it is, so things will improve and people will be talking about those improvements. We know we're getting it right with just some of the green shoots that are showing and some of the conversations that we're having. And as you say, that's led by our chief exec and our new exec team all the way through our culture network. So we've got all that. One of the things we are planning on doing though is repeating, not massively and in complete detail, but repeating some of the discovery aspects. So the idea of the data, the patients, the staff, our partners, what does our workforce look like, and what do our people say? The idea of going that little bit of discovery again and going back to those key points, patients, people, staff, partners, going back to those, that's when we'll really know we've got it right. Yes.
Fantastic. And you both mentioned measures through the conversation so far. I was just wondering if you would be able to share, a couple of examples of how you are measuring impact. Give me something kind of, what sort of metrics you might be looking at, or what are some of the things that you're focusing on? Perhaps Ricky first.
Thank you, Louisa. And very quickly, really important question. So yes, we've got the main measures through the NHS staff survey, pulse surveys, etc., and they're quite macro level indicators. So when you look at micro level indicators, so tip number 3 from me is when you break down the NHS staff survey data to team level, as long as there's 11 or more responses, I use that and my team use that to co-design individual team level culture improvement plans. So our team development offer is fundamental to the NHS staff survey. So a speech and language therapy team will come to me and say, we want an away day. Great. Here's your team development, but here's a section where we'll be looking at your culture data and you will be co-designing your culture improvement plans, which you take ownership of. And this is where, as Jane described, the culture agents, the culture ambassadors, then kind of are inspired by feeling involved in that journey. And that's really important, because quite often people will say, the organization isn't doing this, the organization isn't doing that, but we are the organization. We're the people that make up the organization. So that collective responsibility and accountability starts to embed down to local level. Because I've been up since 4 a.m, I'm just going to see if I can be clever to share my screen, because I've just got one slide I can share with you. Has that come up, Louise?
Yeah, that has come up. Yeah, I can see that.
I actually don't believe
might-
that, because it's like, you know,
Table
because
one, staff engagement.
found
that
out one so quickly as well. Brilliant. So this just really rapidly gives you, you know, the indicators I'm looking at. And again, staff engagement is at the center of that focus. And as you can see, this is just from the Isle of Wight, the transformation in staff engagement score, because we're Isle of Wight is an integrated trust, and Portsmouth is in partnership and a formal partnership with the Isle of Wight. But, you know, when you look at the acute corporate recommending the organisation as a place to work from the start of the CLP journey, also, so cannot underestimate the impact of CLP. It went from 39% to 57%. Community went from 35 to 64.9. And again, we saw that, you know, rapid change in the other key questions around standard of care and care of patients. Big jumps from 39 to 54, and in community 36 to 55. And
Wow.
last year's staff survey results, the mental health provider of Isle of Wight was the only mental health provider in the country that improved in recommending the organisation as a place to work, and that improved by 5%. So again, you know, massive changes can occur. And then just finally, this is the 6-point model that I used following CLP, just to make sure the connections are all together, and it links very firmly with a quality improvement methodology. So building insight for quality planning, forming the vision for quality control, learning in partnership for quality assurance, and collective leadership for quality improvement, and improving organizational effectiveness through strategy and growth. And then number 6, making it happen, people power, enabling the people promise with the power of our people. I'll just stop sharing my screen there.
Thanks, Ricky, and congratulations on those improvements. I don't know if you saw the hearts and the applause kind of popping up on the screen as you were sharing that, but yeah, that's great improvement. And Jane, are there 1 or 2 measures that you guys are going to be looking at and monitoring as you work through this journey as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And oh gosh, I would love to be in the same position as Ricky in 3 years' time to say that we've had those kind of improvements within Luft. That would be really nice. We're really hoping to see. What we've done is we're at the very early stage. We've put our culture data dashboard together, and we've taken that under the themes, you know, the ones that are behind you, the vision and values, teamwork, goals and performance, learning and vision. We've taken all of those, and we've taken the key areas, some of them from the pulse, some of them the annual staff survey, but some locally ones as well, that we can really drill down. And reiterating what Ricky says, it's got to be meaningful at every level. So we've got trust-wide, but we've also got within hospitals, we've also got sites, we've also got divisions, and we've also got, you know, so looking at those, and we've created a culture data dashboard for a year. We've got a strategic plan for a year at the moment. We're going through a lot of change at Luft, and then this time next year, hopefully, we will be free with a vision to go for, you know, to go for the sky, a little bit like the Isle of Wight did. Yes, hopefully.
Fantastic, thank you. So Jane, I've got a question just for you at the moment. I'm just wondering, as you're building your change team and rolling this work out across your organisation and undertaking those discovery tools, how you're noticing behaviours changing across your organisation as a result of that collective leadership approach.
Thanks, Louise. Yeah, and you know, we really are starting to see it. There's just we are just generating some real hope and some trust. The language that you're using, the way we're describing the collective leadership, the compassionate leadership, what we want to achieve, it's really resonating with the people within Luft. It fits with our values very well about being fair, caring and innovative. And there is a hope within the organisation and within the city, that actually, yes, this is there's commitment and dedication. We've got an absolute fabulous team. The trust wide, you know, sort of everyone who works in Love is amazing. But we are actually now seeing some of that, you know, a good few years of hard change, the merger, COVID, lots of different things, new exec team, lots of change. We had Maggie with us for a little while as well after she was in the Isle of Wight. So yeah, a lot going on, but you know what? It's coming through now, lots of little green shoots of hope, trust, and then the culture network just resonating that information through the cascades. It's working really well. Thank you.
Thanks. That's such a positive story, and hopefully everybody can draw some of that hope from you. I can kind of feel it coming through the screen. So thanks, Jane. And at the other end, Ricky, of that journey, I'm wondering, looking at the work that your culture change team have undertaken at Isle of Wight and perhaps at Portsmouth, what do you feel has been the impact of the programme on the change team themselves?
I think it's been a profound change. I think having a consistent methodology. So the importance of diagnostic, right? The discovery phase is incredibly important. But then starting the journey and sticking with the course is really important. And we're going to get ups and downs. You know, it's not been all, you know, plain sailing and you know, rapid improvement. There's been a lot of hard work behind the scenes, and there's been some disappointments along the way. And there's a lot of people and OD professionals on this call, and every single one of you is doing an amazing job under very tremendous challenge and pressure. And it's really OD services. So we will get knocks, and we will have those difficult times. But it's really important to think about what's the short, medium, and long-term impact of what we're trying to do, because quite often, and I hope people don't look at the Isle of Wight transformation and think, oh no, we want to do that within a couple of years. It might not work. You know, it might take 4 or 5. At the Portsmouth, you know, it will take me. I'm looking at, you know, about a 4, 5, 6 year improvement journey to get to this type of improvement. So, you know, be responsive. Go back to CQC 5 domains. We want an effective service, but we want a responsive service by building insight and undertaking those needs assessment. So we establish the baseline, then we identify what do we realistically want to achieve in the next 2-3 years, because our trajectory nationally has been going down. So if we want to start to plateau and start to rebuild, it's not about 10, 15, 20% improvements. It's 3 to 4% improvements. It's 5 to 6 improvements, and 8 to 10 improvements over the next 3, 4, 5 years. So that's my biggest tip. And then finally, I mentioned the VUCA world: volatile, unpredictable, complex, and ambiguous. The sustainability of that is the antidote, which is vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. So I'll write that down in the chat. But then give people the vision of what we're trying to do, help people understand what we're trying to do, give clarity around what we're trying to do, and give people the agility to make change happen.
Wow. Thank you, Ricky. And those top tips kind of lead me into my kind of closing, really, about any top tips and reflections to maintain motivation and harnessing that change team over time that we can perhaps leave people with today, helping to maintain that motivation and enthusiasm. Jane?
So for me, the way we've pitched the change team, it's about honesty, openness, keeping the momentum going, involvement and voice. So that's kind of thing we've just been very much, you know, sort of, you're here, you're at the table. We're using that. You're at the table. It's a massive table, but you're there and you've got a voice, and we're just being open and honest about it. You know, some things are going to take a long time to do. Some things will be quicker fixing. But yeah, it's just that's how we're doing it, and just staying enthused, yes, and keeping that momentum going, keeping working through, you know, working through the programme. Yes.
Thank you, Jane. And Ricky?
Yeah, I think you know, in very tough business world, challenging times, I think we all want to come in to do the best thing that we can for our patients and community, and it's about, we hear about patient-centered care, which is absolutely the foremost and front and center of what we need to do. But people come first as well. If we don't look after our people, we won't be able to deliver outstanding care. So I think anything around our communication, around putting patients and people first in our language, is really, really important. And that's kind of I think it's my fourth or fifth. Sorry, my head's spinning now, but I think it's fourth or fifth. But yeah, just think about the language and the communication. Keep it real, keep it connected to the organization, connected to the people, and connected to our patients.
Fantastic. Thank you. That feels like a great note to close on. Thank you both so much for sharing your honest journeys and reflections. And I'm hoping that everybody is able to take some hope, take some ideas and some inspiration from what we've been discussing this morning. So thank you, Jane. Thank you, Ricky, for your time. And I'll hand back to Steph now.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Ricky, and thank you, Louise. Such a rich conversation and some real insightful hints, tips that have come through, and even just reflecting and connecting back to our colleagues from the LLR system. Some of the commonality that was there coming through were, we still talk quite a bit about trust, the building of trust that's needed in all of these forums in order to have effective collective leadership. And what was interesting from Jane and Ricky's accounts as well is almost that bit around that continual reflective loop of understanding how to practically connect to more people, getting more people involved. And actually there was overlaps with a lot of social movement approaches to change with regards to really sharing that accountability, that belonging, that ownership. And then the last thing that I will sort of just draw on that session as well. Brilliant references to using data in terms of anchoring about how we know we're getting somewhere and improvements. But there was also the mentioning of the understanding the data, but understanding the experience and feeling behind the data. And it is that synergy that actually moves us forward. I'm mindful that there are lots and lots of questions from across that piece. So what we're going to do, I'm going to hand over to Vicky, who will support us in just having the question and answer session, just to make sure we can actually hear as much as possible. Thank you, Vicky.
Thanks very much, Steph. So welcome to the panel back in the room, and I've been monitoring the chat, and we've got a couple of questions that are directly from the chat box. So one question from Sonia, I think it was directed particularly to Jane and Ricky. Are there any professional advocates that you have in your trust? So I'm not sure who wants to go first, Jane or Ricky. Jane, do you want to dive in?
Thank you. So within our change team, we don't have professional advocates, but within our steering group, we are moving, sort of the steering group phase, but from the exec level is being used as an advocacy route throughout the trust. Yeah.
And Ricky?
Yes, thanks, Vicky. Similar to Jane, really. The culture improvement kind of change champions is an important network, but the culture change network I kind of looked at as part of our wider staff networks anyway. So you raised this, your quality strand networks is a wellbeing champion network, culture change network. So each had its own kind of development journey, and that's really important, I think, whether it be champions or advocates. When you look at those networks, what's the story those networks are trying to tell? What's the exam questions those networks are trying to answer? Because quite often they become talking shops and not action orientated or quality improvement orientated. So that's probably the key thing for me in terms of that question, in terms of professional advocates.
Thanks, Ricky. And this is a question for all of the panel, really. The chat, as I've been monitoring it, there is so much enthusiasm for your enthusiasm and the work that you've shared and how valuable your journey has been. And I guess, I suppose, picking up on that, your enthusiasm really clearly comes through in the work that you do. So can I ask each of the panel, I'll do a little round, what excited you actually the most about your journey? So can I start with Alice on that one, please?
I knew you were going to start with me. I've
Oh,
got the
sorry,
time to
Alice.
copy what everybody else says.
It's the
No,
disadvantage of having an A, isn't it?
No, that's absolutely fine. So I suppose there's a selfish reason about what excited me around. Actually, as senior leaders, we have to deal with a lot of rubbish in our day jobs as well. There's a lot of targets and filling in forms and board attendance, etc. So this is the stuff that I get out of bed for. This is the stuff that goes, I know why I'm here for. I'm making that difference. So that's a selfish kind of perspective, but that's okay. The more corporate response is actually around, if we don't make a change now, we're going to be having this conversation in 10 years. And actually, if we just focused on recruiting nurses and filling vacancies and bringing down agency, we are not going to address the challenge around our workforce, getting people to want to be here, changing that culture, feeling like we're developing and we're all influencing the way we work. So that staff satisfaction metric is important. This is the stuff that will make that change. It isn't the agency target. It isn't the narrative around 10,000 new nurses. I know that's all important, but the energy that this gives me is absolutely why Friday I spent 8 hours doing our event. Now, I'm a CPO for 2 systems. I also look after digital, and the list goes on. But that's the energy, that's the time, and that's how we do it. So find the thing that gives you that passion would be, my view. I hope that helps.
It's brilliant answer, Alice, and sorry for putting you on the spot to go first. Bina, can I ask you now for your view on that?
Yeah, certainly. I think my view, I'm going to go back to our strapline, more good days. We spend so much time at work, all of us, and not just that, we are part of the population, so we are the service users, and we want to create more good days for our people, whether that's staff, whether that's our service users, patients, citizens, etc. And for me, this is what drives me. It's about making a difference. It's making a difference for our people. And in terms of the cultural leadership programme, what I think is fantastic is inclusion is central to all of our work. So there's a strong focus on inclusion. This is making sure that everybody's voice gets heard. So we work with our partners, we work with social care, health, local, work with our charities, emergency services. This is about giving everybody a voice and then really getting everybody involved in creating our culture, creating that best place to work and receive care, and a thriving environment. So, for me, the thing that gets me really focused is the more good days for everybody, including our service users.
Excellent. Thank you, Bina. Kate, can I ask you, probably no surprise that I came to you next?
No, I was ready for you. Okay, lovely, thank you. And following Alice and Bina's passion is a hard job to do, but I think hopefully that kind of demonstrates the passion and the commitment that we've got locally. This is something that we're all bought into. What excites me more than anything is that this isn't just at organisational level. This is across system, and coming from social care and that recognition that social care, we're not just one we're not the local authority, we're so much bigger than that. And so the opportunity to try and thread this throughout the city, a city of Leicester with such a diverse population, and really sort of take that passion and commitment and drive it across the system, that's what really excites me, that we can break down those organisational barriers and achieve that at scale.
Brilliant, thank you, Kate. Ricky, can I ask you now, please, what excites you?
I think all of the above, to be honest. You know, amazing answers for what my colleagues have just said, and I think the only thing I'd add to that is just that inclusivity piece is around. You know, we all know it's not just about nurses. It's AHPs, it's administrators, it's people at every level of our healthcare support workers. It's people at every level of our organisation, corporate colleagues who are invested in having a direct or indirect impact on patient experience and outcomes, but then also working very closely with the voluntary sector, the third sector, and local authority colleagues, public health. Really, really important that we have an opportunity to do something really special around that true partnership working, because it's not just about the ICS, which are very important, but it's our wider system partners who are equally important in terms of transforming outcomes for our communities, but then also within organisations as well.
Thank you, Ricky. And Jane, what excited you about your journey?
Oh, and how can you follow those four amazing ones? Absolutely reiterate everything. I suppose the only thing I would add into there is I am from Liverpool. I'm working in the Liverpool Trust. The health inequalities that are around in city regions where I live, we want to change. We really want to change. The people who I love and care for live in the city. The people I love and care for work in love. There's people everywhere, so it's about that community. So all the other things that people have said, but it's also the things that excite me is the actual difference will be making a difference to the people who are close to me as well. And as I say, our trust employs so many thousands of people. There's that many people that are touching everybody within the local area.
Thank you. They were all fantastic answers from all five of you. As I say, your enthusiasm is really coming across. Can I ask a question again from the chat box as well? So this one is from Sonia, and she's asked, do you see this as a useful initiative to actually help staff restore and feel valued? So a question from that staff perspective. I'm not sure if somebody wants to volunteer or whether you'd like me to just go around again. I'll go around again then. Jane, can I start with you first, please?
Yes, so within Luft, I would say we've been through, as I mentioned, quite a challenging change journey, and there is still resilience within the teams. There is still resilience in there, and they have that faith and hope that this will bring about the change needed. Lots of things have happened in the past. Lots of times have happened different initiatives, different programs, different ways of working. But actually this one does seem to be the one that actually we can see how it will make a difference and how it will bring about the change that we want to do, so that they do have the belief in it, which I think is half of the battle.
Thanks, Jane. Kate? I
Yeah,
surprised you there, didn't I?
you
I saw
did.
you jump, sorry.
You did. No, that's fine. That's fine. No, I'd absolutely say yes. It's a real opportunity, I think, to give staff that opportunity to feel valued and to be restored. We're working in really challenging times, and so this is another opportunity. And I think one of the challenges that we found locally, certainly in the local authority, is just making sure that we give staff that space and support them to engage in this when they're often overwhelmed. And when we're able to do that, the feedback that we get is fantastic. So it's just allowing staff the time and the space. And yes, absolutely, I think it can really support that journey of restoration and value, definitely.
Bina?
Yeah, thanks. I think just building on what colleagues have said, actually, what I find in terms of cultural leadership programs, so I'm going to go back to our event that we recently had. And it's fantastic that colleagues from our system and other colleagues that we interact with are on this call. But it makes a difference in terms of getting people connected into this work. There's a real desire to come together. There's real desire to make a difference. And for me, if we create those opportunities, so just going back to the event we had on the 3rd, you know, there was so much energy, and I think it's recognized, you know, people feel recognized and valued, and if we seek out their contributions. So I think just going through the process, it has an impact on people feeling valued, feeling involved, feeling engaged, because this is about them shaping our future direction and culture. So I think being connected has a massive impact.
Thanks, Bina. Ricky?
So immediately, and I agree with everyone, what everyone said. I think the only thing I could add to that is looking at the immediate links to the recent Kirkup review. And the Kirkup review talks about 4 key objectives: teamwork, compassion, professionalism, and listening. And I think if I tie that back to Kim Taylor's comment in the chat box from North Cumbria ICS, overcoming that challenge and behavior is working. It has been difficult. There's been times where it's been easy. There's been times it's been very difficult. But I think what we have to demonstrate is the impact of looking after our people and the correlation to quality improvement within organizations and improve patient outcomes and experience and reduction in health inequalities. If we can articulate that business case better, then I think that is powerful. But then also bring in the people stories, the patient stories, to get that qualitative focus as well of the impact that organizations are having on people. So the Kirkup review, the investigation into East Kent Hospital maternity services. So teamwork, compassion, professionalism, and listening as part of Kirkup. I've just put that into the chat. So again, there's immediate links there by thinking about what's the national, regional, and local drivers for culture change. And then I start to think we can start to build a bit of a picture there.
Dallas?
So from a value perspective, I think one of the big impacts is that time that we're giving people, as Kate says, that our staff are as important, and giving them the time to think this through and feel valued. But taking that on further, it's the turning it into action that I think has CLP has allowed us to turn from a beautifully framed evidence-based framework, because that's where you start, into something that feels real. So I can see that change on a day-to-day basis. I can feel it in my organisation, and that's the value bit. That's the added value. And we presented, all of us say, these are the reasons why we've done it, and this is the progress. It isn't all rainbows and unicorns. Let's be really clear. There are barriers. So for every 3 leaders who are going, I'm really up for it, and you've got my time, and I completely buy this, you're going to have one that's going, why are we sat in a room? What, I don't, you know, how's this treating our patients? How's this managing the care home crisis? That you have to spend as much time convincing, shaping, showing that action to be able to then get them on board. And sometimes do it in spite of them. So you've got enough of a critical mass to do that social movement to say, okay, that's fine, that's your view, use it, but we're moving forward. And I think that's some of the things that we will always face in this space, because we all learn differently. We've all got our own contexts and experiences, but convincing as many people as you can to be able to say this is the right thing to do, and seeing that in action, I think, has been really, really key.
Thanks, Alice. And that segued wonderfully into one of the questions that we've got in our chat from Kim. And Kim specifically asks about, well, she mentions, first of all, how very inspiring you all are as a panel. It's important to acknowledge that. But also she talks about some of the barriers and how you actually overcome those barriers to actually engage and get buy-in, particularly from some of the higher levels in the organisation or system and some of the senior leaders. So can I ask that one to the panel? Is there anyone that wants to kick us off on that one? Thanks, Ricky.
I don't mind. I think it's a question that's resonating with me, because when I look at the data of staff experience and engagement at Portsmouth University Hospitals, we're on a very significant downward trajectory from 2019 to current time, and there are inspiring stories, inspiring people delivering outstanding care and experience, but there's also elements of a disengaged workforce. And I think it's about building trust again. I think it's about stakeholder mapping, stakeholder relationship, identifying the diversity of staff groups within the organization, and not having a one blanket approach to culture change, which I think again resonates with the CRP program, because it takes that individualized approach. And I think that's a key part of it. So at a macro level, you do want a culture change program that hits everybody, but then you also want that micro level approach that is responsive to the needs of people in staff groups and individuals, and your diversity elements as well. So and from a senior level, I think you need the voice at the very top of the organization. So at the Isle of Wight, I had Maggie Oldham as the chief executive, who was very firm but fair in her approach around why this is important. At Portsmouth, I've got it in Penny Emmerich, who's our chief executive, who is firmly invested in culture change. And that makes a massive difference when everybody on the exec and trust board are fully behind you, because it gives me confidence, it gives my team confidence, because we're the spark that's trying to ignite culture change in the organization. So there's a real pebble in the pond moment for any organization at the start, middle, or the end of the journey. Find that spark, get those key people involved, and it will take time to build trust. Admit trust has been broken, and people are either having a terrible time in their membership as in their organizations. Admit that, and then work with them to co-design solutions around what makes things better, I think.
Thanks, Ricky. Does Bina, Kate, or Alice want to come in from a systems perspective? Thanks, Bina.
Fantastic. Thank you. Although Ricky covered it, I think the only one point, and Ricky alluded to this earlier, is language. You know, language can be a barrier, and we're working with health, social care charities, emergency services. So for me, it's keeping that language simple. I think Ricky covered it, because that can be the thing that turns people off. We talk about synthesis as part of the cultural leadership program. People don't understand that language outside our OD circle. So it's using very simple language that's actually going to keep people engaged in this work. And then finally, and Ricky's alluded to this as well, it's that partnership. So we have to demonstrate this is led by partners. So all of the work that we do is co-led with our local authority. Kate's here with us today. I think people need to show them, we need to demonstrate that this is joint led with all of our partners, and it's fronted by all of our partners. So it's just remembering that, because that can be seen as a barrier as well if people can't see that visually in terms of the work we do.
Thank you, Bina. And I can see Steph has joined us.
You know what, that I think we could go on, couldn't we? But I know times are against us, as always. What we will look to do is scan and make sure there aren't any other questions that we've missed, and we'll actually contact and write out to you if we've missed them. But I realise that time's precious and people have got other meetings, etc., to go to. So really, all that's left for me to say is a huge thank you to all of you. All of you who've taken the time to participate, to share, to listen. Clearly, to all of our speakers and our panel who have given their insights, their experiences, warts and all. And I loved the piece where Alice actually came through and actually said, you know, it isn't unicorn and rainbows. Let's be real about this. You know, what we're doing is challenging, especially in our context. However, there's insight and information with regards to nudging through it, working through it, etc. I think one of the things, I mean, there are many things with regards to themes that have come through, but I'm wanting to keep it short. And I'm going to come back to Ricky's definition with regards to collective, where he talked about collective leadership being around collective responsibility, decision making. I think it was accountability as well. The other thing that I would actually like to add on to that, to make it a quorum, so to speak, and a quad, is actually with collective leadership comes collective support. So when we are talking about those challenging times, those barriers trying to break through, because we have established those bases of trust, there is collective support to actually move through, to renew, to re-energize, to take us forward. And that's not to be underestimated, because actually that's one of the biggest resource bases and drivers to actually move this work through and to continue on this journey. So what I would ask you to do is to please share your thoughts, your comments and your feedback. You'll be, again, if you go into Menti, you'll see the questions with regards to your thoughts on the session, etc. Again, they're briefly there about your overall experience today. What are your thoughts in terms of understanding collective leadership? And what could improve your experience, learning experience going forward? Because we're learning, we want to make sure that when we put on these events and have these spaces, that you really do get the maximum value out of them. As I think is being said in the chat a number of times, the slides will be shared with you. So there'll be all of our contact details on there with regards to getting more information, how to access resources to support, etc. But don't be strangers, keep in touch. Let's connect as a community. We're part of the collective. We are part of this collective leadership piece that's happening up and down and across our health and social care environments and contexts. Again, thank you very much for your time today, and have great days. Have great days, more good days. Take care. Okay.